Hello, lovely people. Welcome back. Last week I introduced you to The Artist's Way. I've just finished my first week. In this chapter or episode, we're going to talk about week one, what week one includes, and then my experience with week one and how that's fit in with the rest of my life. Chapter one for week one is called Recovering a Sense of Safety. And the chapter focuses around recognizing the inner enemies that block you from being creative. So it talks first about shadow artists, who are people who want to be artistic, but that side of them has somehow been suppressed and drawn back into a part of themselves that they don't show to the rest of the world. That doesn't apply to me, but I'm sure it applies to many, many people. So as you write the morning pages, it focuses on those negative core beliefs. That voice in your head whilst you're writing that says, why are you writing that? Who cares? Why would someone care about what you're writing right now? This is crap, this is cheesy, you're never going to be an artist. Who do you think you are? So it's all of those voices in your head, and everyone has different ones that basically tell you to stop creating. It calls those little blocks and phrases and voices blurts. And then the idea of the first week is that you convert your blurts into affirmations. And an affirmation is just a statement that something is already true or is already so. They have to be true, and quite often you know if they're true. If you're saying affirmations that you don't quite believe in, that's not going to work. So they are statements that something is already so, and you tell yourself over and over again, and it becomes a pattern in your mind that counteracts your blurts. I actually didn't write all of my blurts down. I just wrote the affirmations down. So I'm happy to share those with you, and then they'll give you an impression of what my blurts were and still are, and I use the affirmations to counteract them. So my affirmations are: my art is meaningful. My art spreads love, kindness, and understanding. I am allowed to create when terrible things have happened. My creations are not just attention-seeking spectacles, nor seekages of approval. They are real. I can and am unashamed to create when I grieve and feel ready. There are no time limits for readiness. Not everything I create has to be art, but it can be if I want. It doesn't matter. So those are my affirmations. They'll give you an impression of what my blurts were. And how I converted them into affirmations. And whilst I'm writing, a blurt comes up saying this is meaningless, and then the affirmation comes in and says, no, my art is meaningful. The first day, I found my morning pages boring. I'll be honest with you, I found them very boring. Julia Cameron recognizes that that's a pattern that some people have and that some people go into. And she writes words to the effect of, explore what boredom is. Boredom is your mind saying, what is the good in this? What's the point of this? So I'm not saying that it is boring or isn't boring, but when you're finding anything boring, it's your brain saying, is this worth it? Is there something else that we could be doing that's good for us? So in some sense, a part of my mind thinks that the morning pages are pointless. Now, for some people, that's going to be because they believe that they're never going to be an artist, and any attempt to become one is pointless. For me, it's not that. I don't know why I found it boring, and I'm still exploring that. I didn't continue to find it boring. On the second day, I did my morning pages, but the night before, we had decided to put my dog through emergency surgery. My morning pages and my whole morning was focused around belief and faith and focus on we had high hopes for Cara going into surgery. She survived the surgery and we were all on a high. And at midnight, my mum came into my room to tell me that Cara had died. It was devastating. And still is devastating, and I'm still in the process of grief. I really loved Cara. I didn't do my morning pages the next day. I just couldn't. I didn't feel like doing anything creative, especially I didn't feel like doing anything artistic. This chapter of the course was about overcoming blurts and blockages, and then I think just about the most massive blurt you could have, or I could have, is death, someone dying, and then having these beliefs of like, oh, are you really going to do this attention-seeking thing now? Simultaneously, there was so much pressure of like, overcome the blurt, overcome the blurt, overcome the blurt, and it was too much for me to overcome this week, and I just couldn't write my morning pages. But there's nothing about the book that says anything about a time limit, and that was a huge relief to me to realize that I was trying to rush, and that's where the affirmation, there are no time limits for readiness, comes from. It's like, okay, I was not ready to write, and there was a blurt, and I recognized it, and it was a big one, and the blurt is not true. I am not attention seeking. My art is meaningful, and not everything I create has to be art. The most creative thing I did this week was the funeral of Kara's death, and that was deeply meaningful, non-performative, non-theatrical, but deeply, deeply ritualistic. And it really came through this creative flow of what we needed at certain times. We laid with her for as long as we needed. We buried her in the perfect place, and we planted lilies of the valley where she's buried. And we didn't know this at the time, but we discovered later that lilies of the valley are a symbol of friendship and a joy for life, which Kara just embodied so fully. I just find that unity and connection and love for the family and love for other people is the only thing that matters to me now. The whole performative aspect in terms of showing off in the arts, in terms of trying to climb an artistic social hierarchy that we kind of self-perceive or self-generate, we create that in our minds, and it's none of that's real. None of that's real, and none of that matters. Seeking fame, seeking money, seeking all of these things are completely irrelevant if they're at the expense of love, connection, and kindness. And the next day I was able to do morning pages, which was a huge flow of grief and sadness and anger and just disappointment. The huge disappointment of believing in Kara, and then she got through it. And then she died. The night took her. It was unbearable, but being allowed to release it felt really good, very freeing. And it was then that I realized that our whole family had been creative the whole day. And we tend to think of creativity as this joyous thing, and I think it's represented that way in the book, but it's not always joyous. Creativity is a deeply human trait. The whole debate about are you creative or not is a kind of nonsense discussion. You are creative because you're alive, and creativity is an inherent part of life. Thank you for tuning in and listening. Tell the people that you love them, and tomorrow do the same.